2023-11 for June 6, 2023. Those that like to stand and join us in the Lord's Prayer and Pledge of Allegiance, please do. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Entertain a motion from council to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Any corrections, changes? Seeing none. All those in favor of the consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. The consent agenda passes unanimously. Mr. Mitchell is not with us tonight. Mrs. Hurley, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. President, council members, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get started this evening, there are a couple of housekeeping matters. As Mr. Cannon has said, Mr. Mitchell is out of town today, so he will not be attending our meeting this evening. Also, the council on May the 2nd postponed voting on certain amendments to the 2021 collective bargaining agreement and the associated documents. This was to allow council time to review the proposed amendments as they relate to the fiscal year 2024 budget. And these amendments were presented as resolutions 64-2023, 65-2023, 66-2023, 67-2023, and Legislative Bill 2023-05. On today's agenda, you will see resolution number 76-2023. This is amending the 2021 collective bargaining agreement, and this resolution replaces resolution number 64-2023. Also, you'll see resolution number 78-2023. This is amending the pension plan as it relates to the 2021 collective bargaining agreement. And this resolution replaces resolution number 65-2023. It was determined that resolution number 66-2023 was not needed at this time because the language agreed upon in the collective bargaining agreement regarding the accidental disability health insurance rate is currently in the personnel manual. And then also resolution number 67-2023 is not needed at this time because the salary increases are incorporated into the fiscal year 24 budget. Legislative Bill 2023-05 is back on the agenda for council's consideration this evening. I just wanted to point these things out so you wouldn't get confused as to why there are different resolution numbers for these documents. Okay. So looking at the agenda, the first item is a public hearing on legislative bill number 2023-06. And this is an act to amend Chapter 133 of the Wicomico County Code titled Animal Control, Article 1 titled General Provisions, Article 3 titled State Animal Care and Cruelty Law, Article 4 titled Potentially Dangerous Animals and Dangerous Animals, Article 6, titled Impalement, Confinement, and Euthanization. Article 7, titled Public Nuisances, Adoption, Liability. Article 8, titled Animal Care. And Article 12, titled Civil Penalty. A public hearing notice was posted on the county's website and also published in the local newspaper. And we have Mr. Andrew Illuminati here if there are any questions.
Ms. Hurley, at this time we open the floor for a public hearing on legislative bill number 2023-06. If you have any comments you'd like to make in reference to this specific bill regarding animal control, come to the podium, please. State your name, your county of residence, and your concerns.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Right over here is great. Right there is good. Thanks.
This all has to do with the dogs and all of the... Hi.
How are you?
This does all have to do with dogs and,
Yes,
okay,
Yes.
okay, I'm sorry.
it's okay.
Let me pull up my,
Don't forget your name and county residence and
hi, my
Okay.
name is Sarah Starr, and I live at 108 Tall Timber Lane in Fruitland, Maryland. When my husband and I bought our house 3 years ago, it was a dream come true, but our dream quickly turned into a nightmare when we realized that our neighbors at 112 Tall Timber Lane bred pit bulls. It wouldn't be so bad if they didn't get out all the time. I would be able to deal with the crying, the fighting, the barking if they just stayed contained, but they don't. Over the last 3 years, my family has been constantly harassed by these dogs and the family that owns them. They have chased my children, harassed our elderly neighbor that lives behind us, run numerous people back into their houses or into their vehicles. But worst of all was the attack that happened to me in October of 2020. I was working in my front yard and I had my small dog on his lead so that he could enjoy the beautiful day. And out of nowhere, I saw the 2 pit bulls that came around from my neighbor at 110's backyard. I was able to get to my small dog, but I wasn't able to release him from his lead, so there was no way for us to escape the attack. I remember thinking to myself, at what point do I sacrifice my dog to save my own life? I knew I was going to be hurt. I was fairly certain I was going to be bit. I wasn't sure if my dog was going to be killed. When the owner of this dog came to retrieve his animal, who was in the middle of biting me and attacking my dog, he looked at me and told me his dogs don't bite. At which point I showed him my arm and told him that he was lying. It is hard to believe that the aftermath was even worse than the initial attack. Between the medical bills, the adverse reactions to the medication that they gave me, and the lawsuit, my nerves and my body were completely ravaged. I have panic attacks whenever I see these dogs. I keep a sharp knife on my person when I'm in my front yard working. I don't stroll my baby anymore. I don't walk my dogs. I bought a large dog hoping that the barking would keep them away. The things that I've resorted to are borderline insane. I keep replaying those moments in my head and thinking to myself, what would happen if this had been my children? Would they have been killed? I also kept hoping that there would be some sort of repercussions now that somebody had actually been hurt. But much to my dismay, nothing has been done to prevent the breeding of these pit bulls or to prevent them from escaping their yard. To date, the only thing that has been done to rectify my personal case is a private civil suit to cover my medical expenses, my dog's medical expenses, and we had a very small settlement that paid for half of the privacy fence that I placed on part of my property to allow my children to play safely. I've spent almost $20,000 of my own money in an effort to protect my family from enduring another attack. Honestly, there's nothing that can be done to hold the owners responsible given the current state of the laws. They have been cited for different code violations for their fencing, but they continue to breed dogs that they cannot contain and that roam the neighborhood freely. And I've come here tonight to ask you to change the laws that allow the freedom to breed in excess dogs that may possibly end up in the county shelter anyway. I do not allow my children to ride their bikes without me watching them like a hawk. They are not allowed to play in their own front yard. I have no help with yard work from my children because I'm scared of what might happen if the pit bulls were to come up. We have run drills like it's a fire or something major to prepare for because I know eventually they will be met face to face with these pit bulls again and again, and they have. The pit bulls have continued to come on my property and harass myself and my family over the last 2 years, despite the fact that we have some signage in our front yard saying to stay off and a court-ordered cease and desist. Our neighborhood is desperate for help, and that's why we are asking you today to do something. And if you need verification that anything that I am telling you is the truth, please ask the Fruitland Police Department for their files or Animal Control for their files. There has to be a solution, and I am asking you to please find it. Our neighborhood needs to be able to walk in our yards without fear. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Starr.
Good evening, guys. My name is Wayne Burrell. I live at 26725 Wood Avenue in Hebron, Maryland. Like her, I live next door to some land that a house burned down over 2.5 years ago. There's not a structure on the property now except for two 10 by 10 steel cages that are about 6 feet tall with anywhere between 6 and 10 aggressive dogs inside. We have contacted animal control many times. We actually have a court hearing tomorrow morning in district court against the landowner. They don't care about the dogs. They don't feed them until 3, 4, 5 days. Okay. My wife has pictures of they are chained inside of their 10 by 10 pens with a leash inside of the pen. My wife has a picture of the dog jumping over and hanging himself from the top of the fence. His feet were not on the ground. You know, call the owner up, give him the benefit of the doubt. Hey, your dog's hanging. Let him hang. Have it in a text message. You know, so hopefully tomorrow morning we can get some justice done. But the dogs that jumped out, they have chased us in our own yard. God forbid it bites me, because I will shoot it. You know, the sheriff's department's been out there. They've made notes. Animal control's been there. There's got to be some rights to people who care about their property and their homes. We can't even have guests over because they bark constantly all hours of the night. You know, we have video of that. We've done everything that the lady at the animal control has told us to do, and it takes years to get anything done. You know, we should not have to be afraid to go in our front yard. I jumped out of the back of my truck one day after putting something in the house, and that one of them dogs was right there. I mean, he was getting ready to light my butt up. And, you know, we've had the police there. We've been in arguments with the landowner. You know, his mother owns the property, but the son has the dogs on the property, and they don't care. Grass is 5 feet tall, you know. So we live in a jungle. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Burrell. Any other public comments? Concludes public comments for legislative bill 2023-06. Entertain a motion from council to approve legislative bill 2023-06.
To move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Do you have any questions or discussion? Josh?
I'll just say, I think this should be we are, you know, this is something that we as a county council have tried to address, continue to address now for last couple of years, even with passing this bill, which would then have greater protections. This will greatly improve the scenario, the current situations that Ms. Starr and Mr. Burrell have just mentioned. But I don't think this should be the end of it, because I think, you know, we continue to hear. I just got another email from another situation. You know, we continue to hear of other situations where either the animals themselves are in really terrible shape, or you know, where they don't feel like, the neighbors feel like they're in an impossible situation that they can't get out of, and a nightmare that they can't wake up from. So I don't think that this should be the end of it. I think we need to continue. I look to our legal counsel to continue as we take this in to make sure that we are doing the best that we can. I'll just leave it at that.
Comments, discussion? Questions on the bill? We'll do a roll call. All those in favor of legislative bill 2023-06 will signify by saying aye. If you are in favor, we'll start with Councilwoman Shields.
Aye.
Councilman Merritt. Aye. Vice President Baker.
Aye.
Councilman Wynn.
Aye.
Councilman Hastings.
Aye.
Councilman Holloway.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Legislative bill 2023-06 passes unanimously.
Okay, next on the agenda is a public hearing on resolution number 73-2023. This is approving a license agreement with SBY Elite for Wicomico County, Maryland, on behalf of the Department of Recreation, Parks, and Tourism for a period of 3 years. A public hearing notice was advertised on the county's website as well as in the local newspaper, and council held a work session on this request on April the 18th. And Mr. Steve Miller here, Director of Recreation and Parks and Tourism, he is here if there's any questions.
Entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Not usually. At this time, we open the floor for public hearing on resolution 73-2023. If you have any comments you'd like to make, come to the podium, please state your name, your county of residence, and your concerns. Seeing none, that concludes the public hearing on Resolution 73-2023. Entertain a motion from council to approve Resolution 73-2023.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion?
Yes, I have to abstain because he's my nephew.
Okay. Councilwoman Shields will be abstaining. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of Resolution 73-2023, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0 with one abstention.
All right, next for your consideration is Resolution Number 74-2023. This is approving the Department of Recreation, Parks, and Tourism's increases to program fees in the fiscal year '24 budget. And again, Mr. Miller is here if there's any questions.
Entertain a motion from council to approve Resolution 74-2023. Motion?
So moved.
Motion second.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 74-2023, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Resolution passes.
Okay, next is Resolution Number 75-2023. This is to certify the drainage tax roll to the Director of Finance as requested by the Board of Managers of the Public Drainage Associations. Council previously approved the drainage tax roll for several public associations on April the 18th. At that time, however, 4 of the public drainage associations did not move forward for approval because the ratio of cropland to woodland needed to be corrected. That ratio has now been corrected, so the drainage tax rolls are ready to move forward for council's consideration.
Entertain a motion from council to approve Resolution 75-2023.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Resolution 75-2023 passes unanimously.
Next is Resolution Number 76-2023. This is amending the collective bargaining agreement between Wicomico County, Maryland, the Office of the Sheriff of Wicomico County, and the Wicomico County Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge Number 111. And Mr. Paul Wilbur here, our county attorney. He's here if there's any questions.
In a motion from council to approve Resolution 76-2023.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor of Resolution 76-2023, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution passes.
Okay, next is Legislative Bill 2023-04. This is the annual budget and appropriation bill of Wicomico County, Maryland, to adopt the county budget consisting of the operating and capital budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024, the governmental and enterprise funds budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024, the anticipated grant funding budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024, the fiscal year 24 position changes budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024, the fiscal year 24 paying classification plan for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024, the fiscal year 24 proposed capital budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024, and to appropriate funds for all expenditures for the fiscal year ending July 1st, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024. And we do have our county executive, Julie Giordano, and our director of finance, Pam Olin, here if there are any questions. But I think I did jump the gun.
You did, yeah.
So we'll get to the legislative bill in a second. I'm going to back up and go over a resolution that we have on the agenda that we added at the last minute.
I was looking everywhere.
He was on a roll.
I apologize for that.
Oh, man.
So next,
78.
so 78 is adopting amendments to the retirement plan for employees of Wicomico County and the Board of Education of Wicomico County.
Thank you, Ms. Turley. Entertain a motion from council to approve Resolution 78-2023.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Resolution passes. What's next?
Next is the budget bill. I can read that summary again for you if you would like.
Entertain a motion from council to approve legislative bill 2023-04. Need a motion.
2000.
So moved.
Oh, okay. So, second.
Who made the motion? Josh, no, motion second. Discussion. I understand that with discussions that we've had, Mrs. Olin, sure, certainly. Thank you. I think that we've had a lot of communication between the executive branch and you. I know we really appreciate all the communication back and forth because it's very timely and it was a lot. It was an awful lot.
I believe council had some, at the last work session, had some changes they wanted, and there is a motion written up.
Right.
I don't know who is planning to, I'm not introducing that.
Okay.
But I believe that needs to be next. And if council has any questions about the budget, please let me know.
Sounds great. James, you want to go ahead and,
Yeah,
any amendments to Legislative Bill 2023-04?
a motion to,
This is long.
yeah, you got, give me a minute. Motion to amend the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget as follows: to reduce Tri-County Council by $300,000, $422,000. Reduce volunteer fire, $400,000, which was earmarked for the Length of Service Award Program, LoSAP. To reduce Board of Education by $513,694, which is from the additional $1.3 million requested above the maintenance of effort required funding level. There is $250,000 earmarked in the budget for additional school resource officers. To reduce contingency transfer reserves by $327,000, to increase general fund departments by $742,958 for health insurance rates increasing by 5% versus the 4% shown in the proposed budget, increasing the salaries for employees that were previously getting less than 6% to 6%, increase contingency transfer reserved by $804,158. These changes will adjust the following budget book pages: Exhibit B, General Fund Expenses, Appendix A, the Board of Ed appropriation, the Exhibit E, position changes, Exhibit F, position control document, fiscal year 2024 salary ranges, fiscal year 2024 corrections salary ranges, and the capital budget. In addition, these changes have an impact on the budgets reflected in Exhibit C, titled Governmental and Enterprises Funds. I guess I would like to make a note that we're not cutting the Board of Ed budget. We're still keeping the budget, and it's actually, we're adding $800,000 to the budget. So it wasn't cut. I know there was a lot of communication. We got some emails and such about that, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that we weren't cutting their existing budget. They're still getting more to their budget. Thank you.
I think it's clarification, it's $800,000 above maintenance of effort.
Yes.
That's the motion. Second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Any questions for Pam? Josh?
I'll just say, I say before, I generally don't think we should be taking from education funding. We need to get our per pupil funding much, much higher than where it's currently at. We are currently the second lowest in the state, and I think that's just that's not a good mark for us by Wicomico County to be able to show the rest of the state. We need to be able to showing that we care about our students and we care about our schools, and we need to be much higher than we currently are. I do think the council as a whole is trying to be judicious and try to make sure that we can address a very critical issue that we also have, which is, of course, making sure that we retain or attract new county employees. That's been a big issue for us. Obviously, inflation has not been helpful, but the previous couple of years, we went through the process to try to do a salary study to raise salaries, and then of course inflation has jumped dramatically. So the council is trying to do is to not just support what the county executive has done and proposed, in which case is 3% raise in salaries for the employees, but also to then match another 3%. We want to make sure that we can continue to attract the most and the best workers here in the county. I'll say on that note, the amount of times we've said here and the amount of CEOs who have come here who have said, if we don't have if we don't heavily invest in our schools or look like we do, we're not going to be, we're not going to be attracting the big CEOs, the big companies. They're going to come in here. They want to be able to have good schools. So I appreciate what the council is doing with limited funds, but I got to say, I don't think it is appropriate for us to, I think, to continue to detract from where the county executive sets the budget when it comes to the Board of Education.
Josh, anyone else?
Yeah, I'll say something.
Joe?
Okay. All right, I've written this up because it's, I didn't want to forget anything. Okay, I've been through a lot of budgets, but I've never been through one with this large of a spending increase. $20 million. That's what we're increasing the spending in Wicomico County, from $173 million to $193 million. This increase will have a long-range impact on future financial situations throughout our budget situations. Throughout our budget deliberations, I have supported pay increases for our law enforcement officers and employees, and funding for our fire and EMS providers. I also support the funding of the additional school resource officers. However, we must be wary of what the future holds. We have been warned by our state delegation of the write-downs or budget cuts from the state. So will that result in less monies from the state that will affect our future budgets? Will that mean less highway user revenues, as happened back in the last recession? Will we be asked to pay more of the teacher's pension, which happened in the last recession? Also, our disparity grant, will that be reduced? We don't know the answer to those questions. Speaking of recessions, all indicators show we probably are headed into another recession. Will it be a mild recession? Will it be severe? This is the reason the state's doing their markdowns. Also, COVID and ARP money is drying up. To use $10 million of our reserves at this time is a reckless approach. In my time on the council, it has always been stressed to maintain a healthy reserve up until this year, and then the story changed. Passing this budget as it is only means we probably will need to rely on our reserves more in the future. What lies ahead? We don't know. The full impact of Kerwin, we don't know the answer to that. The cost of Time to Care, the Time to Care Act, we don't know the impact of that. Revenues from changing our liquor dispensary, we don't know what they'll be. Looming costs for the fire service. This is something that's going to be very severe for us in the next few years. I mean, we're hearing more about it all the time. We could lose tax revenue because of a recession. I was here for the last recession. It wasn't pretty. We had to furlough employees. We had to cut back on services for all of our citizens. So I'll leave it at that and say I'm not going to vote for this budget. But I appreciate all the hard work that this council's done, because we've met many times. And I do want to thank the council for one thing. We cut a budget to the Tri-County Council. They came in here wanting more money, okay? You know, I think it was $470,000 more they wanted, and they were stressing how bad they needed the money. Well, today we get I know this is trivial, but I'm going to put it out there because everybody in this audience goes to the grocery store, I'm sure. Everybody right now is kind of stressed out over what groceries cost and the cost of living. So after they came in here and asked for all this $470,000, we get an email today where they're having their quarterly meeting where they're having prime rib and crab cakes for all their guests and their staff. So that's where your tax money's going. We wouldn't have these problems sitting up here if people were more frugal with your tax dollars. So anyway, thank you.
Councilman Holloway, any questions, comments? Judge?
I have to open my big mouth. This is my first budget, and I wasn't here for the education, and I always said I believe that we need to spend more money on our children because they're our future. However, I'm still in the learning process of how the budget works, and as I called our Laura this afternoon, I said I'm gonna have to use a ruler to look at line by line and see just how the money is being spent. And I remember, and I know Joe remembers Mr. Atkins, he was on the county council.
My cousin.
Yeah, well, he would, when I worked at the Daily Times, he would come in and fuss about how we were spending money, and he would bring his lunch. And, because he was trying to save the county money. And I think all departments and people should be very conscious of what they spend. I look at the volunteer fire department, when you hear the word volunteer, they're volunteering their time and they're at risk to get killed and on a job, on a fire or whatever. Then you have the code enforcement officer that we wanted to be put in the budget, that was taken away. And that, to me, is a place that helps to improve our neighborhoods so we won't see abandoned cars and trash and rubbish. Mm-hmm. And we have one code enforcement officer for the county that has to do 325 square miles, and most of his work is based on complaints, but I don't know what the other jobs he has to do. But I think that next year, if I'm living, I'm going to make sure that I read the budget line by line, because the way it's compiled, things could be in there that I don't see. And I may miss something, and you have to ask more questions. So I've been kind of under the weather, but that's no excuse, I think. But next year, I'm going to scrutinize the budget more and make sure people know, the public know what's going on as far as the budget, and ask questions, but people know more about numbers. I like things to be separated. I like departments to be separated. I like to know the salaries separated. It may have been in there, but you have to go from page to page and look and find things. And I don't think that's the way it should be if you're going to make a concrete decision on people's tax dollars. And I think we, as Joe said, we need to be careful how we spend your money. And I think this is a good learning experience for me, and hope we'll do a better job, especially the new guys here. I know James always asks questions and things, because we both are learning. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we couldn't give more to the education, but maybe it'll work out next year.
Thank you, Councilman Shields. Josh?
I just want to take all this. It's Mr. Holloway brought it up. I want to make sure it's clear. About 15% of our budget or so is coming from state or federal dollars. Say what you will about the other 5%, which is from our rainy day fund. But I don't think anyone in this room, if asked to them, hey, would you give the dollars that you earned, would you go give it to a student in Prince George's County, or to a road in Montgomery County, or to a new building in Montgomery County? Would you do that? And most of the folks in the room would probably say, no, this is my money, I earned it. Well, currently the disparity grant is 8% of our budget. It's gone between roughly 8 to 11% of our budget. That can be yanked at any point in time. The disparity grant that we have is only because of the goodness of the hearts of the people of Montgomery County and Baltimore County and others. So they view us as a county that has a lot of low resources, so they give their hard-earned dollars that they get, and they give it to us because they care. That can be taken at any point in time. So I think as a whole, I want to make sure that we're, I always bring it up as the county executive, and she's listening here, and I know Pam's always on top of things, but I want to make sure that we continue to go forward, that we're balancing, we're being as sustainable as we can, and realizing at any point in time, the goodness of the hearts of the federal government and the state government can change like that, and we need to be prepared and prepare ourselves to pay for the things that we have locally. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman Hastings, any other comments?
And for those reasons is why I've expressed to Pam and the county executive, I have concerns pulling that large amount of money out of the reserves as well. And moving forward, I'll be very hesitant on pulling money from the reserves.
And as I've stated, that this was the intention for this year, and it's not the intention for future years.
Glad to hear it.
So I had stated that previously, I will state that again. The intention is that we knew we had a savings account. Interest rates are what they are. We have a lot of needs for capital projects. The $10 million is dollar for dollar going to capital projects. So that would be the spot that if you wanted to save on the 10 million, you would have to cut capital projects that are desperately needed for our county.
Joe, I've worked with you for quite a while, and I certainly do understand your reservations. I do appreciate that. And it is a very large budget in my conservative nature. I also wanted to check and make sure that we were doing the right thing. But I do think that a lot of the increases at this point in time in Wicomico County were really necessary. I think that a lot of arguments that were made and justify these expenses were good arguments. Pam, I have 100% confidence in what you bring before the council. You're telling us that we do have adequate reserves. So that being said, I feel that we are in a good position because we do still have quite a base there. So
And I do want to say, of the $20 million increase, 17 million of that is capital projects.
right, which is
So-
very unusual, but it's very important that we are spending our operating. Unless you want to finish that.
I just wanted to state that, so the growth in the budget is one-time projects. Again, we are not dollar for dollar. As I stated before, we're taking 10 million to cover $17 million worth of capital projects. So again, that is always the line that I'm looking at, is what is our capital project number and how much are we using of fund balance to cover that? And it's not quite, but it's about 1.75. For every dollar of fund balance we're using, we're getting 1.75 of capital projects in this fiscal year. Next fiscal year, those capital projects will be funded and be underway and/or done. And the intention is not to come to council with that large of an ask.
And the idea there is to use the resources that we have in our reserves to fund the capital projects, because this is not the time to borrow. This is certainly not the time to borrow. But we have capital expenses that we know need to continue. Not that that anyone misses this. I would like to review very carefully what we are doing. I'll be very brief. As has been stated, we're giving $800,000 above maintenance of effort. This county has given above maintenance of effort maybe twice in the last 15 years. Gaines Hawkins would certainly remind me of that every time we talk. Not only that, but we also increased the library by 10%, which I think was excellent. The library has been short-sheeted for quite a few years here. County employees, we gave an increase of 6%. I would have to say thank you to Vice President Baker and Councilman Merritt for their initiative in making that happen here. I was a little surprised. I was looking at maybe 5%, but we ended up with 6%. So congratulations to them, plus the rest of the council as well, outside of, I know, Joe, but.
I supported that.
You supported that. Sorry, Joe. Sorry. All right,
You know,
sorry.
and I didn't call any of these council members out like you just did me. When
No, I
started making
wasn't,
comments.
no, I wasn't trying to call you out. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
All
Joe.
right, that's fine.
I think maybe that's a point maybe we could make, Joe, that even though you vote against the budget, there are some things in the budget you did approve.
called me out.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was sort of doing that,
I understand.
I wasn't trying to be too sarcastic about it. Anyway, aside from that, we did increase the deputies' salaries, which I think was very much necessary. And we also increased the base salaries from $46,000 to about $55,000. Sheriff Lewis was very adamant about these increases. I must say, had many conversations with the sheriff, and he was concerned about his deputies and his staff as a whole, and wanted to see this happen. And I agree. The way things have happened now, especially on the federal level, you're seeing this coming down even to the local level, where I think it's becoming much more difficult to do the job as a deputy, as an officer in Wicomico County. There's not as much respect from the people who are out there, the dangerous people who are out there. And I think that in itself justifies the fact that there should be some type of an increase to let them know that we are concerned about, you know, how their daily lives are working and what we feel that how important they are to us. In addition to that, we also contributed to all the fire and the ambulance companies over $1 million, which is very much needed. We have to continue, especially with the fire departments, to try to figure out how we're going to address these issues with retention and recruitment. We, of course, as Pam said, we invested very heavily in the operating and the capital budgets, especially with our airport, which is very important to Wicomico County, as well as many multi-million-dollar investments in other capital commitments throughout the community. All at the same time, reducing your property tax rates in Wicomico County. So I think it's very good. We're assuring that there's a very strong and very vibrant community for our employees, for the county, and for our children's future. So that's my speech. And Joe, I do seriously apologize. I really wasn't trying to be negative about it.
I have one more
Yes.
comment. When you mentioned the deputies and the things changing, the times are changing, also, I have to bring up teachers. We talk about the children in the school, but our teachers are going through so much, because the kids are different. They go into the school and probably fear for their lives too. And I just heard that a elementary student in Glen Avenue struck a teacher. So when you hear, when teachers have to go up against, not like when I was going to school, the teachers had control of the class. You didn't even look at a teacher wrong. But now things have changed, and we have to look at what they're going through in the school. So we may need to look at their salaries down the road, because they're taking their life in their hands. You don't know if there's alcohol, drugs, everything in the school. And I believe in the public school system, but it needs to change and protect our teachers and give them some power to correct these kids, because the kids to me, are out of control. And if you want the teachers to teach the kids, you're going to have to control. They're going to have some control of their classroom, and that's just a fact. Or otherwise, you won't be able to teach. You won't be able to teach nobody. They won't even learn how to read and write. You know, so I think we need to consider that when we do the next year's budget, and when we talk to the board representatives, that how can we help these teachers in these classrooms? Because they're not scared of the police. I'll tell you that right now.
Comments? Questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment as read, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed?
Opposed.
2 opposed on the amendments. So it's 5-2 on the amendments. So the amendments do pass. Any other questions on the legislative bill as a whole? Seeing none, all those in favor of legislative bill 2023-04 as amended, we'll do a roll call. Shani?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Shane?
Aye.
James?
Aye.
Josh?
Nay.
Joe?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So the legislative bill number 2023-04 passes 5-2.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dawn.
Okay, next on the agenda for introduction is Legislative Bill 2023-05. This is an act to amend the Wicomico County Code, Chapter 59, Personnel Rules, Section 59-15, Accidental Disability Benefit. And this bill relates to the collective bargaining agreement that you approved earlier this evening.
Entertain a motion to approve Resolution 77-023, 2023, sorry. Motion, second. Any discussion?
77, 2023, is that what you said? Right?
77-2023.
Okay. Yeah.
No, this is Legislative Bill
Oh, I'm sorry, I got ahead of it.
2023-05.
I'm sorry. You know, I was wondering why you said that. Okay, sorry.
Back up one.
We'll start again. Entertain a motion to approve Legislative Bill 2023-05. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of legislative bill number 2023-05, say aye. We'll do a roll call on this, please. Councilman Shields?
What did you say?
Vote on legislative bill 2023-05.
Oh, yes, aye.
Aye. Councilman Merritt?
Aye.
Vice President Baker?
Aye.
Councilman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilman Hastings?
Aye.
Councilman Holloway? Aye. And chair votes aye. Legislative bill number 2023-05 passes unanimously.
Okay, we can have the public hearing on that bill, the first meeting in July at 6 p.m. That was the introduction, so the next step would be to have a public hearing. Okay?
All right.
All right, so next on the agenda is resolution number 77-2023, and this is to levy and impose a property tax for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024. This is to provide for the payment of a service charge for a property owner under a semi-annual payment schedule, setting the tax rates for real and personal property, and providing for the collection of the property tax. And we have Pam Olin here to answer any questions.
Entertain a motion from council to approve resolution 77-2023.
I move.
Second.
Second.
Any discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, resolution passes.
Mr. President, that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley. At this time, we open the floor for public comments. If you have any comments you'd like to make, come to the podium. Please state your name, your county of residence, and concerns. We do have a 2-minute clock that's going to come up on that big screen there, so you do have a 2-minute limit just so that we can have a chance for everyone to speak. Anybody at all?
How you guys doing?
Evening.
Dave Cooper, Wicomico County resident. I believe I know most of you, Ms. Shaney. This is my first time meeting you. It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am. Hearing that budget was for the schools was reduced $500,000 to me. And granted, I understand there was an $800,000 increase. That other $500,000 was needed just for these basic numbers. Maryland County, Wicomico Public Schools has an average math proficiency of 16%. Of the Maryland public school average of 19%. We have a reading proficiency of 26%, based off the Maryland average of 36%. Gives us a ranking of 3 out of 10, which actually puts us in the bottom 50th percentile. You say you put money away, you put it in savings for a rainy day. How rainy do you want that day to be? Do you want it to be 1 out of 10? 0 out of 10? Our kids are our future. Why are you doing that? I'm really trying not to say anything wrong here. Trying to figure out why you can't pull from a $60 million account to do $500,000. Think of that number, 500,000 out of 60 million. It's not that big now, is it? How long are we going to wait? How long are our kids going to suffer? Because remember, our kids are our future. I'm literally appalled at anybody that voted for that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. J.C. Richards, Wicomico County, Pittsfield, Wicomico County, Maryland, 21850. Mr. Holloway, I want to respond to your comment about the budget. You know, I understand that we're cutting budgets and times are tight. Anybody that owns a business knows that. James Wynn, everybody that owns a business knows it's times are tight. Everything's high. If I understand it correctly, we've increased the budget for the county council from $50,000 to $200,000. Isn't that the same point of eating prime rib and crab cakes? You're cutting funding for the schools and the teachers, but you're increasing your budget. I don't understand. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. So if it's such an important thing to raise your budget, I guess I don't understand why you need to raise that budget. Why we're not spending on the schools. Why we're not spending on where it needs to be, where the people are. Just my thoughts. Don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Evening, folks. Try that again. Joe Venosa, taxpayer, resident, a parent, and usually a husband in good standing. Can have that. Yeah, I'd like to speak very briefly again on the Board of Education funding issue. Teaching at Salisbury University, I've had the pleasure of having a lot of local students become teachers in our county, like Ms. Giordano was. These are people who have matriculated through the schools, gone through the university, and are now serving our community. One of the constant issues that we hear from them in terms of why they leave is lack of support. We are losing them to other counties. We're losing them to Worcester. We are certainly losing them to Talbot. We have obviously issues within the schools that are reflective of some of those lack of budget priorities. I watched 2 weeks ago at this county council meeting, when it wasn't as well attended, when one council member gleefully said, "I'd cut it all if I could." I think that's a very dangerous approach. I think it's a disgrace. Yeah, you smirk, but we have kids in these schools. This is an investment that we are making. And, you might not have kids yet, maybe you won't, but some of us actually have a concern about how they'll turn out. And when you cut a relatively small increase for this massive spending package on other things, it shows what the priorities are. And congratulations, because now every teacher, every SRO, every staff member, every parent knows this. And they should watch this, because it's a real disservice to our community. And frankly, being that most of you have gone through our local school system, it's a disgrace because you've betrayed your very own people. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Panusa.
Hi there, good evening. I'm Eileen Johnson, and my 2 children attend Wicomico County Public Schools. A few years ago, I started a grassroots group to advocate for fully funding our schools, with one of our goals being true universal pre-K in our county. Hopefully you're aware that every dollar invested in pre-K comes back 6-fold into our community. Please don't believe lies that people say about waste in our schools, and I beg each one of you to volunteer 2 to 3 hours a month, not 2 to 3 hours a week, 2 to 3 hours a month, to help refocus you and see what our dollars are doing. Here's some background for new council members. In 2000, Wicomico schools were ranked 4th in the state in performance. That same year, 56% of our overall budget was invested in education. But by 2018, when our education budget had shrunk to 41%, our schools had fallen from 4th place to 19th place. So we dropped from 4th to 19th place in the state when we defunded our schools. By fiscal year 2019, we were down to 36% of our budget. For some of this, we can thank our misguided, misunderstood revenue cap, which handicaps what we can do as a county year after year, with revenue stuck at 2%. Other counties that have boom years can raise revenue 8 or 10%, but we are forever stuck at 2%. And I hope you'll all support the movement to overturn the revenue cap with a tax rate cap. We can also look to the priorities of our council and our county executive. In 2010, funding was about $50 million, but by fiscal year 2012, funding was $36 million. So within 2 years, we lost $14 million in funding. Within the span of 10 years, we went above maintenance of effort by $0 8 times. I understand that you have concerns about using some of the rainy day fund, and we applaud Ms. Giordano on understanding that we need to invest some of these funds. In 2022, our county rainy day fund was $79 million, which is the highest in the state. The average for the state is 32%, while ours is close to 50%. We need to understand that that money is an investment, and it's a capital investment, and it's a one-time thing. Even though it's become the status quo to go above maintenance of effort by $0, it's not normal. If you defund our schools, the quality of our schools diminish. This year, the county executive found a way to meet the request of the schools, which is 1.3 over maintenance of effort. This is a very small amount of money considering all that our schools do. As Jeff Merritt has said, all the funding requests of the Board of Ed are warranted and should be met. Why aren't we? I'm sorry, I was told it was three minutes. So basically, what we don't understand is why we're stuck on this 6% pay increase for county employees. Why not do what the county executive suggested, 3%, or compromise and do 4 or 5%? Also, there was no chance for public comment since you guys made the consensus vote and the time you voted on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Good evening. Gaines Hawkins, resident of Fruitland, Wicomico County. 4 kids graduated from Parkside. 4 grandchildren who are going to be going to public schools. And I just found out I got another one on the way. Last summer and fall, I interviewed over 50 business and community leaders for a project that I'm working on, a democratic vision for Wicomico County. While the document description carries an implication of a political agenda, in fact, I interviewed Democrats, Independents, and Republicans who were all told beforehand the title and their comments would not be attributed, allowing them to speak freely. The overwhelming consensus from this group was that the most important driver of economic success for Wicomico County was dependent on a highly regarded public school system. A top-tier public school system was vital to attract new businesses and individual entrepreneurs. They wanted an excellent public school system for their children, of course, but more so an education structure that produced a labor pool with the requisite skill set for 21st century jobs. So when the graduation rate of 83% was raised with these folks, that's 83% Wicomico's high school graduation rate. There were lots of shaking heads. We've got to do better. Some acknowledged that the county's commitment to education, second from the bottom in Maryland in our contribution to our public schools, was a factor in our rank of second from the bottom among Maryland counties in high school graduation rate. Second from the bottom, that's where we are. If our local elected officials, you guys, truly are committed to economic excellence, then you need to start with an evident and loudly articulated commitment to pre-K-12 education with the public funding to match that rhetoric. We need to fully support this $1.3 million addition to the MOE, and I look forward to your reconsideration of that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Jim Atkins, Wicomico County. I'm not here to talk about what you think I'm here to talk about. Hadn't planned on speaking, but I heard something tonight that kind of struck a nerve on me. And that was the LoSAP for the volunteer firemen in this county. And then we talk about recruitment and retention. It's going to be hard to recruit volunteer firemen when you have nothing to show for it. Just a little personal history, because I know, I would bet none of you know. I was injured on a fire scene in '06. Thank goodness Wicomico County had workman's comp for volunteer firemen. Workman's comp paid my volunteer all my medical bills, but they did not pay me anything for 3 years and many lawsuits for loss of salary while I was out of work for 2 years. Now that I am total disability and not able to perform in the fire company and make the necessary numbers that you need to make LoSAP and to get tax deductions and things to benefit firemen, I no longer get anything. So it's pretty much, what have you done for me lately? Thanks for what you did, but now that you're injured and you're not able to perform those duties, thanks. There's nothing for you. There's no life insurance for you. If you're not injured and you work in a fire company for 40 or 50 years as a volunteer, and then you're too old to perform your duties, there's no LoSAP. There's no nothing for you. What have you done for me lately? So if we can't do anything for them after they leave the service, you're going to have a hard time recruiting and retaining because there's nothing there for them. The other thing real quickly is now that the fire service agreement has been worked out between the county and the city, let's not wait till the last minute next time. I worked in the 911 center. I know how the numbers are added up. I know how some calls are counted twice. So there aren't 15,000 calls in the city of Salisbury. So now that you're at ground zero, let's figure out a way to get accurate numbers next time so you don't have to give them another $250,000 to the city of Salisbury.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.